Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we dive into a journey of rejection, resilience, and self-discovery. Follow the story of a young woman who, after being rejected by her own family, embarks on a path of hardship, self-doubt, and ultimately triumph. From the pain of feeling unwanted to the strength found in pursuing her dreams. This is a tale of personal transformation, proving that the most challenging moments often lead to the most rewarding ones. Tune in to experience the journey. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to begin today's story. It was a winter evening when my brother's words cut deeper than the chill in the air. "No one wants you here," he sneered, standing there, arms crossed, like I had somehow failed him, failed us. His voice echoed through the space between us, sharp and final. While the world seemed to pause, I could see the faint, distant outline of our childhood home behind him. Cold and unmoving, my mother, standing just beside him, didn't speak. She simply nodded, her face impassive, betraying not a single hint of emotion. The silence that followed was suffocating, as if the very air had thickened, pressing down on me. I had expected rejection, but I hadn't prepared for it to come from my own family. The people who were supposed to stand by me no matter what. Yet here I was, standing in the rain, my suitcase heavy at my feet, soaked through from the relentless downpour. I had no plan, no place to go, but the weight of their words settled like a stone in my chest. The world around me seemed to blur, as though my very existence had been reduced to nothing more than a failed attempt. A dream deferred. I wanted to shout, to scream at the injustice of it all. But I couldn't. The pain was too raw, too deep. Instead, I turned away, dragging my suitcase behind me, the rain blurring my vision as I trudged through the wet streets. There was no tearful goodbye, no attempt to change my mind, just the sting of my family's rejection, followed by a cold, final silence. This moment, this crushing rejection, would change everything for me. It was the catalyst I didn't know I needed. The spark that would eventually ignite my transformation. But at that moment, all I felt was the heavy weight of failure and loneliness. The very people who were supposed to understand me, the ones who should have been proud of the path I was carving for myself, had turned their backs. The dreams I had nurtured for years, the art I had created in the hope of making something of myself, all felt pointless in the face of their scorn. As the night wore on, I found myself walking aimlessly through the streets, my thoughts a blur of self-doubt and anger. How could they have done this to me? How could they dismiss me so easily? As though everything I had worked for, everything I had fought for, meant nothing? The questions swirled in my mind. But there were no answers. There was no comfort to be found in their words. Only the sharp sting of their rejection. I needed to get away, to escape the suffocating atmosphere of my hometown. But where could I go? The last few years had been a struggle, working multiple jobs in New York, trying to make ends meet while pursuing my passion for digital art. But no matter how hard I worked, the weight of my art school loans hung over me, pulling me deeper into financial despair. And now, this, being pushed out by the people I had once hoped would support me. My pride was shattered. My dreams dashed against the cold, hard reality of rejection. But deep down, something inside me stirred, a quiet, resolute voice that refused to be silenced. This rejection wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. I would prove them wrong. I would succeed on my own terms. The thought flickered like a small flame, barely a whisper in the storm of emotions that raged inside me. But that flicker was enough. It was enough to keep me moving forward, to keep me from giving in to the darkness. I had no idea what the future held, no clear path in front of me. But I knew one thing. I couldn't stay here. Not in this place where I was nothing more than a disappointment. A failure. I needed to rebuild, to start anew. I had to find my own way. Without the safety net of my family's expectations. Without the comfort of their approval. And so, with the weight of rejection still pressing heavily on my shoulders, I made a promise to myself. I would never again let my family's opinions define me. I would stand tall, no matter how hard the journey ahead seemed. Because in the end, my dreams were mine to chase, not theirs to dismiss. The bus ride out of my hometown felt like a journey backward in time. As though the years I'd spent trying to build a life of my own were unraveling before me. I felt small again, like the girl who had left with dreams too big for a small Midwestern town. Now returning with nothing but a suitcase full of disappointments. My family's rejection weighed on me heavily, each step away from them feeling like an act of defiance and desperation all at once. As I made my way through the airport, I couldn't help but think about the past few years, the years I had spent in New York. Chasing my dreams of becoming a digital artist. I had worked multiple jobs, surviving on scraps, constantly questioning if the sacrifices I was making were worth it. Art had been my only escape, my passion, yet, it was the very thing that had torn me away from my family. They couldn't see the value in it. They didn't understand why I had chosen such an uncertain, risky path. But that's the thing about dreams, they don't always make sense to others. And they often require sacrifices that others can't comprehend. When I arrived in California, I was determined to pick myself up from the depths of despair. It was there, in the bustling tech scene, that I found a new opportunity, working with a small startup that saw potential in my work. The first few weeks were a blur of excitement and nervousness. It was everything I had dreamed of, creating something with meaning. Something that would bring my art to life. But even as I sat in front of my computer, pouring my heart into each design, I couldn't escape the feeling that I was still missing something, a sense of belonging. Perhaps, or validation that my work was truly appreciated. Then, the email came. A small gaming company in San Francisco had seen my portfolio online and wanted to commission me for a project. The offer was a lifeline. More money than I had ever earned. And the kind of validation I had been craving. For the first time, I felt as though my work was truly valued. But even as I celebrated the achievement, a familiar fear crept into my mind. What if this was just a fluke? What if they would soon realize I wasn't good enough? Despite these insecurities, I threw myself into the project with everything I had. I poured hours into each design, hoping that this would be the breakthrough I so desperately needed. It was during this time that I began to realize something important. My family had been right about one thing. The art world wasn't easy. It wasn't a guaranteed path. But it was my path. And it was one I was willing to fight for. The hours I spent working were grueling. But they felt different now. They felt purposeful. This wasn't just a way to pay the bills. It was a way to prove to myself that I was capable of more than my family had ever believed. I could hear their voices in my head, the doubts they had expressed. The jabs about how unrealistic my dreams were, but now, I didn't feel the sting of their words. I felt determined. The more I worked, the more I realized that success wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about proving to myself that I could do what I loved. No matter the obstacles in my way. As the months passed, I found my confidence growing. The gaming company expanded their contract with me, and I was able to add more projects to my portfolio. But it wasn't until Horizon Gaming offered me a more permanent position that I truly began to see the fruits of my labor. They had seen something in me that my family hadn't. They saw my potential, my creativity, and my drive. For the first time in years, I felt that my art was no longer just a way to escape my reality. It was my reality. It was the thing that defined me, not my family's expectations. With every new opportunity, every new project, I was slowly but surely carving out a place for myself in a world that had once seemed so distant, so unattainable. As the days passed, I realized that my family's rejection wasn't the defining moment of my life. It had been a catalyst for growth, a turning point that had pushed me to finally take control of my future. I wasn't running away from them anymore. I was running towards something better, toward the person I had always known I could be. The path I had carved for myself was not without its struggles. Each day was a battle, balancing the demands of my work with the uncertainty of my future. But as time passed, something inside me began to shift. I had rebuilt my life in California, then San Francisco, and now, Working with Horizon Gaming in the heart of the industry, I was starting to feel like my success was finally more than just a dream. Yet, no matter how far I had come, no matter how much I had achieved, the echoes of my family's rejection still haunted me. It was only when I received an email from my mother that I felt the first stirrings of something unexpected, a chance for reconciliation. The message, though brief, was filled with pleasantries, but it lacked the warmth I had hoped for. My mother congratulated me on my success, though it felt more like an acknowledgement of the accolades rather than any genuine attempt to understand the years of struggle that had brought me to this point. The next message I received was even more unsettling, this time from my brother. His words seemed to carry a faint hint of pride, but there was no mention of the painful past, no recognition of the hurt he had caused. Instead, it was filled with the same surface-level compliments, as if my achievements had somehow validated their rejection. At first, I resisted the pull to reconnect. I had come so far. After all, I had built a life for myself without them, and their absence had not diminished my success. But as I sat in my apartment, the weight of their words, their rejection, still lingered. There was a part of me that wanted, no, needed, to understand why they had shut me out. In a moment of hesitation, I reached out to Elena, my longtime mentor and friend, whose unwavering belief in me had carried me through the darkest times. Her advice was straightforward. If I was going to reopen the door to my family, it had to be on my own terms. No longer would I chase their approval or try to prove myself. If they wanted to reconnect, they would have to meet me where I stood, at the same level, with the same understanding and respect for my choices. So, I sent a message back to my mother. It was measured, calm, and yet it carried the weight of everything I had endured. I acknowledged their congratulations, but I made it clear that if we were to have any real conversation, we needed to address the past, the hurt, the silence, the rejection that had followed me for years. The response took longer than I expected. When it came, it was different. My mother admitted that she regretted her silence, that she had failed me as a mother. She explained how her fear of disrupting the family's expectations had silenced her. How she had been unwilling to support me because doing so would have meant going against my father and brother's more traditional views. The weight of those words hit me like a wave. My mother's acknowledgement wasn't perfect. It didn't erase the pain of the past, but it was the first time in years that I felt seen. The sense of betrayal I had carried for so long began to shift. Not because it was fully healed, but because there was an understanding now, a recognition of what had gone wrong. When my father finally reached out, his words were more practical, but they carried a similar tone of reflection. He admitted that he had been wrong in dismissing my dreams, that he had underestimated my ability to build something meaningful from nothing. For the first time, I saw my family not as an obstacle to my success but as people who, in their own way, were trying to come to terms with their own limitations. The most unexpected moment came when my brother contacted me. After years of silence, he wanted to know about my work, about the studio I had built. His curiosity was not rooted in jealousy, but in a desire to understand the choices I had made. I felt a strange mixture of emotions, relief, anger, and even a touch of pity. Dominic had always defined himself by comparison, by measuring his success against mine. And yet, in that moment, I saw how far we had both come, how much we had changed. The process of reconciliation was slow, but it was real. It wasn't about erasing the past or pretending that everything had been perfect. It was about moving forward, on my terms. I no longer needed my family's approval to define my success. The true triumph, I realized, was not in proving them wrong but in reclaiming my own narrative. My achievements were mine alone, and they stood as a testament to my strength, my resilience, and my unwavering belief in myself. In the end, my journey wasn't about achieving perfection or winning over those who had doubted me. It was about embracing my own path, even when it felt like the world around me was pulling me in different directions. I had come to understand that the real measure of success wasn't how others saw me, but how I saw myself. the strength I found within to rise after every fall. To continue moving forward despite every setback. The reconnection with my family, though imperfect, was a testament to how much I had grown. It wasn't about seeking validation from them anymore, but about acknowledging that they too were shaped by their fears and limitations. Their attempts to understand me were a beginning, not a full reconciliation, but it was enough. I had built something truly mine. Elysian Studios was not just a business, it was a manifestation of my dreams, my values, and my independence. Every design I created, every project I completed, was proof of the life I had chosen to build. A life that no one could take from me. The lessons I had learned were countless. That success comes in many forms. That the pain of rejection is often the very thing that shapes us into who we are meant to become. And that true freedom lies in embracing your authentic self. No longer did I need to prove myself to anyone. I had already proven everything to the most important person, myself. As I stood in the heart of my studio, looking at the work I had created, I knew that this was only the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, as there always are, but I was ready. The rain-soaked night when my family told me no one wanted me there had long passed. But the strength I gained from it would carry me forward forever. If you've enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel to catch more life stories. There's always something new to discover, something to inspire. Don't miss out. Click and follow for more.